In my previous segment, I talked about protesters getting hit by a car, about riots, and about crime skyrocketing. And once again, there's another story talking about very similar issues, but new data points. Not only do we have another story about a woman in a car, the protesters start banging on the car, and then she pushes through them. They claim that she struck them and they broke their leg or something. This lady's getting charged with intentionally trying to hit someone in a car. That's in, I believe, North Carolina. So congratulations, lady. You live in these cities. This is what happens when you don't pay attention. You will be surrounded by these psychopaths. They'll bang on your car. And if you try to escape, because in Portland, we've seen them draw weapons and smash windows, you try to escape, you're at fault. I warned you about this, that the police will say it is easier to beat you over the head and make you, the regular citizen, suffer than it is to deal with a violent mob of terrorists. The police will arrest you. Make no mistake. And now we're seeing murder skyrocket. If you had to guess, which city would have the highest explosion in murder rates, what would you pick? And it's probably not a fair question because you've clicked the title of this video and you likely know it's Portland. 800%. And I found this fact check where it was like, conservatives are claiming murder is up 1,600% in Portland. That is not true. It's only up 800%. I saw that and I was like, bravo, conservatives. Bravo. Because you forced them to fact check and report on something they would love to sweep under the rug. Black Lives Matter has failed. Support for Black Lives Matter is in the gutter, as you probably know, because of the civics data, which I can always just pull up and love to pull up. Net support for Black Lives Matter at 7%. Now, that still means there is more support than opposition, but the collapse is real. Down from the beginning of 2020, before there was any big Black Lives Matter moment, they had 12% net support before Breonna Taylor was killed, before any of that news broke. And now we can see it's down to around 7%. Here's the story. The Fraternal Order of Police have put out some data. Police group knocks calls to defund police on anniversary of Floyd death. The Hill reports a top police lobbying group slammed calls to defund the police on Tuesday as criminal justice reform advocates and others marked the 1-year anniversary of the death of George Floyd. The National Fraternal Order of Police, which describes itself as the world's largest organization of sworn law enforcement officers, blasted calls to defund the police in multiple tweets. Joe Gamaldi, the group's national vice president, labeled the rallying cry as not a rational nor reasonable policy position, asserting murders are skyrocketing in cities that are foolish enough to try defunding the police. Joe, you are correct. And this is why I very much defended the police. I'm not happy with a lot of the things the police have done. I'm not happy with gun confiscation, which, yes, is very real. The Democrats are like, no one's coming to take your guns. Bro, my guns are already, I have a bunch of guns you can't bring in certain states because they've already banned them. Yes, the Democrats aren't having Joe Biden show up at your house, take your guns, although the ATF does this. They're doing it locally. And it's smarter. It flies under the radar. Yeah. Well, I'm not a big fan of the police enforcing whatever law or whatever they're told to do. But I also recognize the world isn't rainbows and candy canes. You don't get to live in your utopia with zero police. If you're going to live in densely populated areas and you're going to live in areas with poverty, high poverty rates, you're going to see crime and you need law enforcement. Now, I can certainly say we should have criminal justice reform. What I mean by that is, dude, if you're getting arrested because a cop thinks you've done something wrong, just shut up, keep your mouth shut, get your lawyer, make your phone call, do it, okay? You're not going to win by fighting cops. However, what we do need, I think, is a more human approach to a lot of law enforcement. It's become too robotic. They're like, you were jaywalking, so here's your ticket. It's like, dude, come on, cut some people some slack. Take it seriously. People should obey the law, but we've got to have some, in terms of penalties. I see people, it's like, you're being sentenced to 4 years for a drug charge. And I'm like, what's that going to do? Is that really going to help this person improve their life? No, you're putting them in prison for 4 years. Is it going to help them get off drugs? Yeah, I guess being in prison, but sometimes people in prison, they still manage to get drugs anyway. So what are we really trying to accomplish with that system? Anyway, I digress. The police are necessary. but should be different, in my opinion. Instead, what we get are extremists saying abolish the police. Well, to be fair, as I often say, I live in an area with no cops, but I also live in an area that's extremely sparsely populated. So I'm responsible for myself. Joe Gamaldi says defund the police is not a rational nor reasonable policy position. Murders surging in every city who is foolish enough to try. Anyone who continues to bluster on this, answer the real question of whether you care about your community or you just want to score political points. And this is why I said, cops, stop answering calls in these areas. It seems like they did. And there's data to back it up. The FOP's official Twitter account sounded a similar note, sharing a photo of skyrocketing murder rates in Philadelphia, Minneapolis, Portland, New York, Chicago, LA, and Washington, D.C. The increase in murder rates ranged from 22% to as high as 800%. Wow. In the group's graphic. Any guesses of what these cities have in common? The organization asked, before noting that they have all turned the keys over to the defund the police mob. Look at this, Portland, 800. What? The funny thing about it is you're not going to tell me that this is coincidence. You know, many of these leftists are like, yeah, but in red states and red cities, crime is going up too. And I'm like, yeah, probably pandemic related stuff and poverty related stuff. But come on, Portland is like the bastion of Antifa, defund the police. It is like, bash is not the right word. It is the epicenter. It is where they were just rioting the other day. So the cops having their buildings set on fire over and over again, stop answering these calls, and murder is up 800%. Yikes, man. Now, here's the important thing you need to understand. Chicago is up 22%. However, Chicago's murder rate is insanely high. So that 22% may still be like 100 murders, whereas Portland's 800 could be like 200 or 100, right? So it's a comparable growth, perhaps. But I have the data, and we'll pull it up. They go on to talk about George Floyd, whatever. The FOP's comments pushing back on calls to reform police funding came as members of Floyd's families met with President Biden at the White House. Floyd's family is in D.C. on the anniversary of his death to call on lawmakers to pass police reform legislation named in his honor. The George Floyd Justice in Policing Act passed the House in March, but has stalled in the Senate amid disagreement over the issue of qualified immunity. The doctrine protects state and local government officials, including law enforcement, from liability in civil suits unless they violate a person's clearly established constitutional right, and Republicans want to keep the legal principle intact. The top negotiators of legislation reported on Monday that they remain optimistic about the prospect of reaching a compromise on the bill. When asked in a Fox News interview Saturday if removing qualified immunity doctrine would deter people from wanting to be police, Gamaldi said it would certainly impact officers wanting to take this job. Quote, I believe that there's reasonable compromises that can be made to make sure that we all move forward on a path where we want to reduce officer-involved shootings in this country. It's the goal that everybody wants to reach. He emphasized, however, the need to discuss the actions of the other individual on that scene with that officer because they ultimately determine how much force an officer may or may not have to use. That is a fact. It's also a fact that there are videos of cops being bad people. One video where a guy's on the ground with his hands behind his back complying and a cop kicks him in the head. I've seen the video. These videos get recycled a lot. And when they happen, those cops need to be immediately charged with a crime. If a cop runs up and punts someone's head who's already complying, charge them with a crime. However, you see the video where the ATF agent refuses to comply and the cops are like, get on the ground, and they pin him on the ground? If you don't want to comply, don't be surprised when the officers they escalate force to subdue you. This is what I understand about a complex society. A cop walks up to me and he says, show me your hands. I show him my hands. He says, put your hands on your head. I put my hands on my head. He says, turn around. I turn around. He then frisks me. And then I say, is there an issue, officer? And he says, be quiet. I say, okay. Keep my mouth shut. You know why? You have a right to remain silent, and you should. And I've had these circumstances happen where the cops then say, sorry about that. We're looking for someone. You fit a description. My apologies. Have a good day. And you're done with it. Swallow your pride. Stop screaming and crying about the fact that sometimes police are doing an investigation. There are people, the cop will be like, you put your hands up. I didn't put my hands up for nothing. It's like, show me your hands. No, I'm not going to show you my. Why? We live in a free society, at least it's supposed to be. And so I understand your rights, but there's also responsibilities. Responsibilities means that if we have police and we ask him to do a job and that cop, you don't know what he knows. He may have just watched someone beat an old lady with a club or with pistol whipper, and now he's trying to stop this person. I'd like to help that happen. I also recognize that some cops are dirty. We had Reason report recently that there was a cop planting drugs on people. He got convicted of that. We need to make sure those bad guys are weeded out. But the problem is what Black Lives Matter is doing is the opposite. It's keeping the bad cops in and it's making the good cops leave. Just like with gun control. Isn't that how it works? They're like, we want to make guns illegal. It's like, okay, so the people who already care to abide by the law are going to be the ones restricted, and the people who don't care get away with it. When they make it about just following orders, then the people who stay in the force just follow orders. And the good cops who want to actually be out there. There's a video on Reddit. It was great. A guy's on a motorcycle and he's lane splitting it. That is, it's when you drive in between the cars. And then he drives past a squad. He drives up and he sees a squad car and he's like, oh no, I'm in trouble. And so the squad car's in front of him and he's on the side of the road. He's driving on the highway and the squad car turns his lights on. Motorcycle pulls over, cop pulls over. The cop gets out and he goes, I gotcha. And he's laughing. And the motorcycle guy's like, I'm sorry, man. He's like, I know. And the cop goes, no, you're cool, buddy. Listen. You got to chill. Don't do it. I got to pull you over. Otherwise, people are going to get mad. So just chill out. You're good. And the guy's like, thanks, bro. And that's a great cop. It's a great cop. It's a great cop. That's what I was talking about with criminal justice reform. When somebody gets arrested and the cop's like, I don't know. I don't care. Tell it to a judge. It's like, dude, what are we trying to accomplish? You want to stop a guy on a motorbike from lane splitting? You pull him over and you go, that I got you. Don't do it again, bro. They're not going to do it. They may do it again later, but people still speed if they're getting speeding tickets. The point is, what's the best way to stop someone from doing it? The cop pulled him over, stopped, the guy stopped. The next time the guy lane splits, hopefully a cop can do the same thing. Bro, I swear, you're getting a ticket. Don't you do it. We gotta be more personable. I know there's a lot of people who believe in like harsh penalties, but clearly harsh penalties don't stop people from breaking the law. They pass these gun laws where they're like, you'll go to prison for all these years for having a gun. People still go get them and they go to prison. It doesn't change anything. It just makes it harder for law-abiding citizens. We want to be more of a community where people do good things because they are worried about doing bad things. It's funny. I was talking about this. I was talking to somebody about Singapore. If you leave litter on a table, like at a fast food restaurant, you can get a ticket. But the reason people don't is not because of the ticket. It's because other people are going to be like, yo, what are you doing, man? Like, I eat here. Don't leave a mess. I saw this meme about in Japan, they don't hire janitors for schools. They make the kids clean the schools. And then the kids are invested in whether or not the school is clean because nobody wants to be the person to clean up the sludge, but you have to. So they try not to make a mess, knowing the responsibility is on them. When you pass the buck onto somebody else, it's when they start ignoring their responsibilities. So here we go. We can see the crime is skyrocketing. Check this out. From Miss Bar, Portland murder rate up, but not 1,600%. Buzz Patterson said Portland defunded law enforcement. The murder rate is up 1,600% in a year. 1,600%. Well done, libs. We then see people saying, what did they think was going to happen? Wow, if that doesn't get your attention, nothing will. Miss Barr's analysis. Miss Barr discovered that while the murder rate in Portland is on the rise, you say, it does not appear to be up 1,600%. According to the City of Oregon crime stats, there were 3 homicides in the first quarter of 2020. Oh, on the rise. Offense count by category. Assault, 2,222. Homicide, 3. Human trafficking, 9. Kidnapping and abduction, 17. Sex offenses, 158. Here's the best part. While the city's official homicide estimates from February 2020 and later have not yet completed the quality control process, according to the Portland Police Bureau, the city recorded its 23rd homicide at the end of the first quarter of 2021. That's an increase of 766%, not 1,600. And I see that and I have to wonder, was this a clever play by conservatives tricking news organizations into fact checking something so that the fact check comes out and say, actually, it's 800%. Wait, and now they're reporting a murder rate increase of 800%. The social media post also implies the increase in homicides is due to defunding law enforcement. However, more work may be needed to verify this area. Crime rates in the city of Portland have been on the rise since 2014. In 2018, there were 26 homicides. You don't think there's a correlation between the increase in crime and the defunding the police? Why Portland? Why 800%? Crime is getting bad. But in Chicago, you see it's up 22%, and that's like 80 people. That's a lot more. It's a lot more than the increase in Portland. So that's what you got to watch out for with these stats. They're like, look at these cities, look at the crime increase. Chicago 22%. And I'm like, that's actually massive, dude. Minneapolis 56. These are all massive. In Washington D.C., where the crime is way higher than Portland. Portland is starting to become more like these places. Now here's the funny thing. Let's say Portland had 10 murders last year. Then they have 100 murders next year. They say 1,000% increase. Then next year, they have 101, and they say a 1% increase. You see how it normalizes? That's what you've got to pay attention to. Now, along with defunding the police, you also get the insanity that is people going to jail and getting charged because the extremists are out of control. Moment, 2 black protesters are struck by a white driver after they block her car and bang on it while marching against killing of Andrew Brown in North Carolina on the anniversary of George Floyd. They say, Lisa Quinn, 41 of Greenville, faces 2 counts of assault with a deadly weapon with intent to kill by the use of a motor vehicle. I am not a fan of police. The bad cops are all that's left. The DAs are being propped up by extremists. And if the conservatives don't realize what's happening, well, then you're in trouble. It's quite simple, isn't it? Isn't it? This woman was arrested by police. Oh, I'm just enforcing the law. I didn't write the law. The cops are the ones who are enforcing this. I watched the video. This lady didn't do anything. I mean, she may have hurt somebody, but she pulls up, they bang on her car, and she pushes through very, very slowly. What's she supposed to do? Let them just beat her car and smash her windows and attack her? One person in Provo, Utah got shot because these extremists ran up and shot them. And it's the police who are doing the enforcing. It's the police who are making sure this woman is going to jail. A hate crime. Look at this. Investigators said they're looking to possibility of charging her with a hate crime. For what? You're driving your car, minding your own business, when a group starts attacking you. And you go a mile, 2 miles an hour, and someone falls, and they say you tried to kill them. You've been warned. Conservatives, libertarians, whatever, you've been warned. Now, the libertarians are probably against the police anyway. But conservatives, you're being warned. The cops that are here are willing to throw the cops that remain. Because we saw in Seattle 200 cops walk out. Those are the good ones. Those are the guys who are like, no, I'm not going to do this. You're not going to make me do this. I'm leaving. These are the cops that stand up for themselves. The cops with principles. The cops without, they say, yeah, I'm fine. I'll stay. I will serve these corrupt politicians. We'll make sure this lady goes to prison. You got it. The cops could have been like, we're not arresting her. It's not going to happen. Get somebody else to do it. That's the problem we saw with Attila's Gym in New Jersey. When the local cops wouldn't do it, they called in out of town cops who are like, I got no problem violating your rights. And so long as those cops are the ones on the force justifying what they do, we're in trouble. But I'll tell you what, the McCloskeys, when the cops came to confiscate their weapons, they said, don't blame the police. Don't blame them. They're just doing their job. Grow a spine. The McCloskeys can come out of their house with guns and say, get off my property. But then they just drop to their knees and lick the boots of the cops who are confiscating their weapons. Dude, that is spineless. To be fair, I recognize that the cops come and they're like, look, there's a criminal investigation. We're taking your weapons. Okay, you comply with the law. But you don't defend them. You don't praise them. You post their photo and say, these are the cops enforcing unconstitutional law. We have a right to defend ourselves. They are taking our weapons away. Show the cops' face. Because so long as conservatives let the cops get away with this kind of stuff, they'll keep doing it. What's the downside? If the cops go up against the leftists burn the city down. If they go up against conservatives lick their feet. So the cops are going to be like, you're under arrest. It's easier to arrest the lady in the car than to deal with those who are attacking her in the first place. How many times I got to point out stories like this before people finally say, wow, the cops are more likely to arrest the innocent citizen as opposed to the violent mobs that are going around bashing windows and shooting people. Did this lady engage anybody? Did she seek anybody out? No. Did she drive her car into them? They ran up to her car. And when, a car fights a person, typically the car wins. And for that, she's being charged with assault with a deadly weapon with intent to kill. Incredible. Seriously, you got to see the video. She barely drives. She just barely goes through and then she leaves. They're saying she was trying to kill people. It's going to keep happening. The DAs are far left. The cops don't care. They will come to your house and they will arrest you. And then don't be surprised when the conservatives are like, well, don't blame the police officer. They're just doing their job. Sure. I'm sure that thought will keep you warm at night while you sit in solitary confinement for trying to protect your family. So keep thinking that. Keep thinking it's not their fault for being the ones who literally took you to the gulag. Okay, not the literal gulag, but we'll see how things go. But when you're sitting in prison and you're like, it's not the cops' fault. I mean, they're just the one who brought me here. It's the system that's broken. The system only changes when you stand up against those who enforce the system. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.